Rankings are usually pretty simple, this one not being much of an exception, but there are a lot of ways to compare the legendary weapons in Final Fantasy V. Do you rank them based on how good they are in comparison to each other? How good they are compared to weapons of the same type? Should you base it on a regular run? On a 4-job Fiesta? I have no clue myself, so I'll just do a hybrid of all these and see what I get. The general order I think most people won't have a big issue with, but I'm sure there'll be some debate on the nitty-gritty details. Let's start right from the top, the Masamune. Most of the legendary weapons get to do only one thing, maybe two, but this one is a stacked weapon for a stacked job. Its most obvious feature is that the user gets to go first in battle, even if you get back attacked. If you're like me, this thing makes fleeing much easier, meaning never having to deal with random encounters ever again, and makes farming for the chicken knife a little less tedious. For bosses, it's fantastic for support roles, meaning you can do things like setting up Haystiga, or dual cast Golem Carbuncle, or quick into mix with Protect Potions, or quick into Mighty Guard and Bahamut. There's no limit to the kinds of overkill you can do when you get to set up before the enemy even gets to blink. The second thing is that you can cast Haste when you use it from the item menu. In a regular run, this is pretty underwhelming, because you'll have Haystiga way before this weapon comes around. However, in 4-job Fiestas, it's fantastic because time magic is pretty scarce. Your options are the Time Mage, obviously, the Chemist with Hasty Aid, the Samurai with Masamune, and buying a bunch of Hermes sandals. Even with access to time magic, a lot of people will still choose the Hermes sandals since it doesn't require setup, the haste doesn't go away on death, it gives you a bunch of debuff immunities on top of the haste, and there's basically no accessory that's better than it anyway. But having the ability to free up the accessory slot for the Elven Mantle, an Elemental Absorption, or even something like the Kaiser Knuckles is a great boon. The last thing is that since it's a katana, it has a crit chance, so occasional double damage at ignoring defense. It's 15% chance, which actually makes it one of the worst chances of all the katanas. However, most of them have a 12% chance, so it's still better than average. And any crit chance is better than none anyways. If spears could crit, they would be at least 2 times better. The Masamune isn't the strongest weapon, not even the strongest katana, but weapon power doesn't mean everything. Utility goes a long way towards general game usefulness. The Masamune is held back slightly by being a job-specific weapon, but the Magus Rod is probably the most generally useful legendary weapon. Almost every magic job can equip it, and you've probably been using the Fire, Ice, Thunder rods for the whole adventure, so being able to just boost everything without going into the menu to swap rods around is as convenient as it is powerful. I bring this up in basically every video now, but the lack of water boosting is the only thing holding it back. Without Mix's elemental power, Leviathan gets almost no use, but at least the August spells and Sildra get boosted just fine. A very straightforward weapon, and it almost never leaves my mage's hand once I get it. Technically, the Sage Staff has as much going on as the Masamune, but its effects are much less clickbaity. The biggest thing about it is boosting holy damage, so the White Mage gets the most use out of it. Holy is insanely strong and cheap already, so making it even stronger for free is amazing. Although an annoyingly high amount of enemies in World 3 absorb Holy, and this will not be the only time I bring this up, but enough late game bosses aren't immune, so just dedicating your White Mage to nuke duty isn't a bad idea. The Sage Staff also casts Raise when used from the item menu. Free infinite revives is great, especially since Phoenix Downs are rather expensive. Plus, Raise and Arise are super MP expensive even with gold pins. Since Raise revives you with critical HP as opposed to the Phoenix Downs 1/4, you do risk that stupid turn-based RPG thing of revive the guy into them immediately getting killed again, wasting your turn. The best solution to this is just to make sure someone else will take their turn right after so you can throw a potion or cure onto them, but the fact that it can happen always irritates me. Another use for Raise is Dragon Fang farming. Just keep Sage staffing the zombie dragons in Drakenvale and you'll have a stockpile in no time. Actually, I guess that isn't totally necessary, since this thing does a ton of damage to undead. It does a surprisingly big chunk of damage by itself, shown during the Advance Achievements run, and there's a good amount of undead stuff late game, so your White Mage can do free single target damage pretty well if you're low on MP. It's definitely the best attacking staff, no questions there, and the Sage Staff is just an awesome weapon overall. Another holy-oriented weapon, and one of the strongest in the whole game, the Excalibur does exactly what it needs to. A lot of damage on a job that already has Damage Dealer on its resume. And yes, it is a knight sword, and as just mentioned, holy can be actively detrimental depending on what you fight, but Spellblade can circumvent that easily if you need to, and it can be double gripped for mega damage. It's funny that the most straightforward job in the game gets the most straightforward weapon. I really don't know what else to say. It's very nice that the Excalibur exists to make up for most runs passing on the Brave Blade. Sasuke's Katana is a ninja sword with a high attack power and physical block chance. Another very simple one, but the ninja especially loves the block chance, since you're probably not putting equipped shields on this guy, not to mention him being quite frail otherwise. In terms of ninja survivability, I feel like your two options are putting him in the back row with two of the Rising Sun boomerangs, or going front row with the katana and like a men gauche, maybe an elven mantle for good measure, but this weapon is strong enough to be worth using a front row ninja for. There's a handful of rune weapons, and I feel it's kind of sad that in place of a more creative one, they just made the Rune Axe the legendary one. I feel like Thor's hammer should have swapped places with this, but the Rune Axe is a pretty damn good axe as far as the whole weapon type goes. In a weird way, this weapon does kind of lead into the Berserker's strengths. Since it adds magic into the damage formula, you're encouraged to put a magic-related ability into the second slot to both boost the damage of the axe, and to make sure you have more MP to keep critting for longer. It's too bad that Berserker can't put on double grip as well as a magic ability. I'm pretty sure that would let them hit the damage cap with a good enough roll. Also, to talk about glitches for a second, I've been told that since the Rune Axe boosts your magic, the only way to do the Super Nintendo Magic Underflow glitch is to steal the Titan's Glove from Azomagia and use that. It is not the most practical thing, since that's a boss you fight midway through the final dungeon, and it takes up the accessory slot so your DPS is lower unless you have a way to cast haste manually, but it is possible, and the damage is nice to look at. So those top 6 I think I can rank pretty definitively in my mind in what I think about them, but the other half I'm less confident in. Here I think I put the Apollo's Harp, but it's mostly because it's the best way to farm for Dragon Fangs. It obliterates the earlier mentioned zombie dragons, but for undead enemies you're usually better off spamming Requiem. It doesn't do as much, but at least it's party-wide. The bonus damage to dragons is nice though, since the Crystal Dragons, Shinryu, and one of the Neo Exdeath sections are dragons. Although, the Bard probably has better things to do during those encounters. And I don't think you're going to be putting equip hearts on a summoner to do more magic damage, novel as that might be. At least this is the best harp, but that's not saying a whole lot. Yoichi's bow is alright. Is it Yoichi? Yoichi? It has a 30% crit chance, which feels a little underwhelming as a gimmick since the Masamune has a crit chance as a side effect of the weapon type. The stat bonuses are nice, the strength is high, it's a back row weapon, so it's all nice for an otherwise unremarkable job, especially since you can still crit when using rapid fire. One of the weirder things is that you can find a stronger bow in History Falls. The lower attack of this bow is supposed to be offset by the crit chance, obviously, but can you imagine getting Yoichi's bow as your last sealed weapon, and finding it has 10 less attack as the one you just found? Sometimes it feels weird that so many weapons just have amazing stats with no drawbacks, but weapons like these need the stars to align to keep pace. With how overly generous Final Fantasy V is with instant kills, leaving one of them for this point of the game feels a bit wasteful if I'm being honest. You got the Death Scythe, Death, Banish, even stuff like Kotoba Pass and Death Claw are required much earlier. In Forge Fiestas it can still be good because you're not guaranteed any of those, and it at least works against Twintania. Plus it's one of the strongest knives available, but it's also outclassed in World 3, in the knife category by the chicken knife, and if you can dual wield, that means you have a ninja, and will probably be using Sasuke's Katana instead for the block chance and higher attack. It's not useless, but even though I always take it, I almost never use it. Also, be careful of Reflect. The Holy Lance is literally just statistically inferior to the Excalibur, presumably being made up for with a double jump damage. This is another reason why I'm convinced the devs thought the Dragoon would be a good job, because there's no other reason why it would have so many things against it, like having some enemies have anti-jump skills or spears being generally weak and rare. It's still strong, and the thing I said about Holy absorbing enemies is still true, although the Holy Lance can't take advantage of Spellblade to offset that. But the biggest thing against it is that it's not the best spear. You're better off just waiting until the final dungeon to get the Dragon Lance from the Crystal Dragons, because it's stronger, isn't holy, and does crits against the dragons, which can actually be used for that purpose, practically unlike the Apollo's Harp. You know the thing I said earlier about the Masamune retaining the katana's crit chance gimmick? It's a damn shame the whips didn't get the same consideration, because 2 of the whips eschew the paralysis chance in place of really weak spells. I've shown off the Black Mage comparisons more than a couple times, and this is not the kind of thing you're using a Beastmaster for. Theoretically, you could give them a magic ability to make the Faraga way stronger, since Beastmaster has a magic penalty for some reason, but even when the Faraga does better damage, it's still not Black Mage level, and the Black Mage can equip rods. And if that wasn't enough, it also shares the Holy Lance issue almost exactly of there being a crit against a dragon's weapon as a rare steal from a final dungeon encounter. Just like, why? Geomancer can't have anything. Earth spells are super rare when using Gaia, so the earth damage boost really only works when you're fishing for the earthquake spell. But this is a lateral movement at best from just spamming Gaia and hoping for the best. Plus, earth might be the worst element to be boosted, because just being a flying enemy gives you immunity, and there are a lot of those. Wind damage is far and away the most common, and Wind Slash is guaranteed against Neo X-Death, so you're seriously just better off throwing an air knife on them. Or you could just real quick fly over to the final dungeon, try and farm for the Rune Chime to boost all your elements, and throw the Gaia Bell in the fucking garbage can for the rest of the game. Now, I do think it's a good thing that elemental damage can't be boosted more than once, because otherwise Faraga and Sildra would be hitting the damage cap early into World 3. However, maybe it could be cool if the Gaia Bell and Gaia Gear could be stacked as a unique feature of the bell. It could be potentially cool. To be honest, the Gaia Bell and Fire Lash could be flipped around as the bottom 2, but neither of them impress me whatsoever, so moot point. Considering the story and gameplay significance of these weapons, you'd really hope most of them would have been must-haves like the Masamune and Magus Rod, but sadly, it seems like the devs put most of the effort into the weapon types that were expected to be good in the first place. There's plenty of room to talk about what could have been improved, but at least they all have their niche use during 4-drop Fiestas, which is my main way to play. Let me know if you feel any differently about these weapons, because I will accept the fact that I have underrated or overrated some of them. But until next time, see ya.